Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you to our new series here in the Archdiocese of San Antonio, a series in which we are beginning to look a little bit deeper into the roots and the reality of stewardship in our communities. This word oftentimes has, I would say, almost put people to dread to some degree when they hear the word stewardship, but it should be a word that encourages us and calls to us in a deeper way to our spirituality and our reality of not only ministry, but life as a Catholic, a Christian, and a human in our world today. And so today with us we have Father David Garcia, who to many of us know him as kind of the godfather to some degree of stewardship in our diocese, that many of us priests, especially as young guys, tend to turn towards and ask for advice and different things. And so we're going to be drawing on his wisdom a little bit today as well. And so I begin by asking Father David just to really quickly, what has been your response when you come to someone, you come to a parish, and you start talking about stewardship? What's the initial reaction that many people tend to have?
Well, I often don't talk about stewardship with the word stewardship. I often talk about it in terms of our faith. It's a way to live your faith. It's a going deeper into your relationship with God. Because what I really want people to understand is, number one, everything you have is from God.
Yep.
And when we realize that, then we should begin to deepen our relationship with God as an act of thanksgiving. God has given me everything, no matter what it is. I have it. It's on loan. It's on loan. I need to use some of it for myself. And if I have a family, I need to use some of it for my family. But everything else I have is on loan. It's all on loan. And what I need to do is be able to live my faith in a way that whatever God has given me, I'm able to return to God in generosity in different ways in my life, whatever it is, whether it is with I'm volunteering my time somewhere, or maybe it's I'm trying to be more active in my parish, I'm taking on a ministry role, a leadership role, etc. And or finally, of course, that I give every Sunday in the parish collection, that I find a way to return to give to God through my parish something of what God has already given to me. So again, this is basically a way of living your faith.
Yeah. And I would say it's also a way of looking at maybe Vatican II in a very different way. Stewardship is much older than pre-Vatican II and Vatican II. But the call with Vatican II and the change it called for the laity and its relationship with its clergy and the church, stewardship is a great way also to look at that in regards, because it calls the laity to be more active in their encounter with the parish, their encounter with the priest, their encounter with their faith.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense where I'm at with.
I think what I try to do is I try to make sure as a pastor that the people coming to the parish, number one, are welcome. Always welcomed. Whether they're a longtime parishioner or whether this is the first time they're ever going to darken the door of the church, that there is this sense of welcome. You belong here. This is your home. In Spanish, we say, mi casa es su casa, okay? My home is your home. And that's really the way we should try to begin a relationship and continue a relationship with our people. Okay, this is yours. If this is yours, and God has given this to you as a gift, because as a member of the parish, you're also part of this community, and you're part of everything that this community does. If so, then you have an obligation. You have an obligation in the fact that you own this. This is part of your ownership. And when you own something, you will always take care of it. How do you take care of it? Well, I got to invest some of myself in it. I got to do a certain amount of work. I got to do a certain amount of maintenance. I got to do a certain amount of improvement, all that kind of thing. For example, if you owned a home, you owned a car, something like that. But this is a community that you own. This is part of being a family, the family of the church. And therefore, if I own it, I have to invest my talents in it, my time in it, and of course, invest my financial resources in it. So the beginning is welcome. Everyone is welcome. Everyone belongs here. This is yours. And then you begin that journey from the door to the altar. And ultimately, the altar is the goal. That is gathering around the Eucharistic table. And Eucharist, which means Thanksgiving, is part of this whole process. So I think that's kind of the way that I like to start, and I like to think about it in those terms.
I think it's a very important part for all of us to really reflect on and think about that we have an ownership. But I would also say it's not ownership, not just in the physical building of the church, but in a physical ownership and a connection to each other. That there is an investment whenever I take ownership in my community, not just in. I remember when I was growing up, my dad used to say we'd go to church in Helena, Texas, at the little bitty tiny church. I think I recently saw they get like 9 people a weekend total for their mass that they do a weekend. But my dad used to be able to point and say that was your grandfather's pew, because he paid for the actual pew that went in the church for that spot. And so if I would flip it over, there was a brand or something that has his name there. But that's not what we mean by investment ownership of the community, is I have a specific pew, this is my spot. But that I'm invested with these people that I'm worshiping with. That I'm getting to know the children that are sitting around me. I remember growing up in Santa Maria, I've always joked that I've had more grandparents than any child should ever say they should be able to have. Santa Maria is a very elderly community, probably average age was 60 to plus years old, and that's probably being generous. Our confirmation class had 5 kids in it. So there were very few children, a lot of elderly, but their investment in us, in our development, in our growth, and I even saw on the day of my ordination the pride they had of me being ordained a priest, that they all were involved, and it was all something that they took ownership of, even all the way to my priesthood, to my becoming a priest. And what would we say, how would we encourage families to continue building that? Because I would say, at least post-COVID, you're seeing more of an individualistic view of the world.
Well, I think what's going on is this. Number one, the community that you were born in and raised in, and that ultimately you were ordained in, there's not a lot of those types of communities that still exist, because as you well know, especially here in the Archdiocese and in many dioceses, we're an urban church. You know, and an urban church doesn't have this long-standing generational, affiliation with a particular parish like you had, where parents and grandparents and maybe great-grandparents built it and were part of it, etc. So that is a beautiful history. And it's something, of course, that you can always draw on inside of yourself for your faith, because you're thinking of the faith of my mother, the faith of my father, what did they teach me, the faith of my grandparents. But today, we're in a very different world. We're in a world that is very mobile. If there's more than one generation in a parish in the city, that's kind of rare. Where you would see the kids and the parents and the grandparents. You don't see that too often in parishes anymore, because of the mobility, because of the way the job situation is, the way housing is, the way people change all kinds of things in their lives and move from one parish to another. So what we have to do is we have to adjust to that. We have to be able to deal with something where you, who loved your parish because it had been your inheritance, as a kid, you inherited it. We have to change to a model in which people come and say, this is my parish, even though my parents or grandparents didn't build it, because I have been welcomed into this community of faith. I am now invested in it. I am working in it. I am a minister in it. I'm a leader in it. I've been, helped to become that, so that it means something to me in a way a little bit different than the Church of Helena meant to you, but still the same church, the same Catholic Church, the same faith, the same idea that what God has given me, whether I'm in a small rural parish or in a huge urban parish, is still that God is calling me to do something with what God has given me. And I have to be aware of that, and I have to be able to live that as I live my faith in God. My relationship to God is shown by my relationship to my brothers and sisters. And so that family of faith that we are called to build up wherever we go is at the base of stewardship.
And I think what I've seen, especially like even in my new parish in Guadalupe, there's a strain there between those families that still have that older, more rural mindset. My grandparents and great-grandparents helped develop the church. And I won't say versus, but in some sort of conflict with the newer families that are coming in that don't have that deep investment of blood, sweat, tears that those older, longer term families and generations have had. So help me heal that reality to say whatever that was, we're something different now. We are a community, we're a family. And I think helping, I think like you said, that's the root of stewardship, is realizing that I'm not on this by myself, that I'm not practicing my faith by myself. I've always enjoyed watching families whenever I'm doing Mass. I always tell the parishioners they're my greatest source of entertainment as a priest. Because when they're in a large crowd sitting in the pews, they always think they're by themselves, no one can see what they're doing. But we see everything that they're doing a lot of times. I'll often tell them I tend to close my eyes when I'm doing Mass, because I get tired of being distracted by everything they're doing sometimes. But I've always enjoyed watching those small relationships begin to form. For instance, the older parishioner sitting a few pews back, waving and dangling keys at a baby that's a little ways up in the church, and watching how they respond and work with one another in corralling a child that wants to run around and run laps around the church, or someone who you can tell is just feeling lonely, feeling a little left out, doesn't know what they're going to do, how the community kind of absorbs or works around them to some degree. And I think, like you said, that's the beginning of stewardship, right? Is recognizing our humanness. And I remember a class we did at the seminary on psychology. It was a reminder, it said humans are social creatures. We're not meant to be doing everything by myself. I'm my own island and I exist through me. But that we need that encounter of a larger community to exist in order for us to truly thrive and reach a potential of human beings.
I think the part of the issue for us today, especially in the urban areas where things are changing so fast, and in the suburban areas where things are changing so fast, is to embrace the notion that we are Catholic.
Yep.
I think often when we're there and we've had a real comfortable thing and we knew everybody, all of a sudden a new group of people come in. They're different from us. Different ethnic group, maybe a different color, maybe originally from another country. Well, this is kind of like our church, you know, who are these people, you know, that kind of thing. And that's what's going on in so many parishes, because what was once kind of, you know, a one culture parish is now becoming a multicultural and a very diverse parish. And so that's when the challenge of being a Catholic really hits you in the face. Am I Catholic or not? Because the word Catholic means universal. That means I care about everybody, no matter where they came from, who they are, what color they are, what background they are, etc. And so it is in that welcoming of the other, in that kind of coming together, that we then form truly a Catholic community around the altar. Jesus was very strong about that in the scripture. Jesus embraced, I mean, how many incidents did Jesus have with Samaritans? Well, Samaritans were the other. We don't touch them. We don't talk to them. They're bad people. That kind of thing was the way the Jews saw it. And Jesus yet makes Samaritans, in the three stories or three incidents that were Samaritans in the gospel, they're the heroes. So he was trying to get the Jewish mindset to change and say, okay, in the kingdom of God, we don't have these categories that they're bad people and we're good people. In the kingdom of God, we're all the good people that are gathered around the altar with Christ celebrating the Eucharist.
I agree. And I think there's an interesting statistic. I'd have to go back and find the study. It said that by the age of 35 nowadays in our society, the average person has lived in 3 different homes. That we're a much more, as you mentioned, use the word earlier, a mobile community, because we're not setting roots the way we used to. It used to be we leave home, we go to college maybe, but then our roots began to get set kind of in one location for most of the time. Nowadays, you're seeing we're moving a lot more, whether we're not always in the same job for longer periods of time, not in the same area living for longer periods of time. And I've actually heard people joke that we're not Roman Catholics, we're roaming Catholics, that we tend to move a lot more. And I think that also impacts this community feel that stewardship calls us to, because there's been a reluctance to invest in a community that I don't know if I'm going to be here beyond a couple years. I think that's especially big in San Antonio. It's called Military City, USA, that a lot of our military families, they don't know how long they're going to be in San Antonio. So what kind of advice would you give to those that they're a lot more mobile in their community now on how to still build meaningful relationships even in a community that they don't know they're going to be in very long?
That's a good point, but I mean, I don't know how long I'm going to be on this earth.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
don't know if you're going to be here tomorrow. I mean, you know, any one of us could go home to the Lord tomorrow. So whatever time we have, limited or not, is precious. It's a gift.
Yeah.
It's to be shared. It's to be given, because that's the gift that God gave me today. So whether I'm a military family that's going to be here for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, or whether I'm a family that has been in this parish for many years, or I moved here because of work and we think we'll be here for a while, the thing that unites us is our Catholic faith. The thing that always unites us is the altar of the Eucharist. That where we do word and worship, where we do word and sacrament, is what a Catholic's all about. So that as we go around the world, we can. If I go into a Catholic church, I'm home. I'm home. Okay, so even though the people look different and talk different and have different languages and customs, I'm still home because it's a Catholic community. I think that's what we have to understand, because as we do that, then the investment is in our faith and our relationship to God and giving thanks to God no matter where I am. It's so important. I think the key to happiness in life is, number one, realizing how much God has given you and giving thanks for that. And number two, in giving thanks, I give. That is, I'm generous with what I have. If I just do those two things, I think I'll have a happy life.
Yeah. There's an old phrase I've heard, it's called an attitude of gratitude. To simply realize that I have so much to be thankful for. Even when we sometimes can feel, you know what, things aren't going well, things seem to be going sideways in my life, there are still blessings. God is still present, and I can still see Him. And many times we can actually say He is closer to me in those storms, in those difficulties, than sometimes we may feel Him when everything's going great and wonderful. Partially because when things are going great and wonderful, we're running full bore, and sometimes our relationship with God begins to take second or third place in our lives. And it's during those times of pain and sorrow that God draws closer, because we're more willing to notice Him. We're willing to recognize He's there. But that attitude of gratitude, to realize I have so much to be thankful for, that is the root of what stewardship truly is to look at that question of, it's actually part of one of the Psalms, so it's a much longer psalm. You know, how can I repay the Lord for all the good that He has done for me? And I think that's where we can pause and kind of take some time to reflect today. Is how can I thank God for all that He has done for me? How can I repay Him for all the good that has happened for me? And it comes from our willingness to open our hearts, open ourselves up to that opportunity of allowing God to truly use me in a community setting, in a family life, of truly living this Catholic faith that we've all been called to be a part of. I want to thank everyone for tuning in for our episode today. This is simply an initial video. This is an opening episode that would allow us to begin this conversations on stewardship. I hope it is one that truly enriches you as we continue to journey. I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.